Okay, let's go ahead and get started with today's Wellness Wednesday. We'd like to welcome everybody who has joined us on the line. My name is Anne, and I am the Wellness Wednesday coordinator here with Oriant, and I'm also a health coach here with Oriant. And we have Coach Callie, another health coach here at Oriant, on the phone with us today. She is going to be presenting on emotional eating, and I'm really excited for this, as I am with all of our topics, but this is one I feel like so many people are going to be able to relate to and learn something from. So, Callie, just want to test the audio. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. Great. I always wonder, can you hear me now? So
Great.
glad we can hear you there. Um, Before we get started, of course, everyone who attends or listens later is going to earn 5 minutes of health promotion credit. For those who are live on the line, that'll appear on your Oriant account later today. And then also, of course, there's the questions or chat feature that we always invite you to interact with us. So if you have any questions, please make sure you ask it. And if I'm not able to ask Callie during the presentation, we can always follow up with you via email after the webinar. And then finally, if you do have any questions or if this is a topic you'd like to discuss further, we really invite you to call your Oriant health coach. And if you don't have a health coach, you can still call our office, and they'll get a health coach on the line that can talk through any of this with you, because sometimes you just need someone to hash it out with to help you make a good plan on how you want to incorporate it into your world. So with all of that being said, Callie, I want to make sure you are introduced not only as an Oriant health coach, but as a certified intuitive eating counselor. So this is an additional certification that you've received that gives you a lot of extra qualification as far as being able to teach this. And you're the guru, and we really appreciate you being willing to share your knowledge with us. So.
Thanks, Anne. I appreciate being here. This is a very important topic. So I think there's a lot we're going to cover today. So let's just dive in.
Perfect.
Cool. Okay. So emotional eating, this is a big one because eating can be one of the most emotionally laden experiences that we have in our lives, right? Like the emotional rhythm to eating is really set from the first day that we are born and we have that emotional, connection of love to our mother and to drinking the milk, right? So it's really comes up to so often in our lives where this emotional eating can be reinforced each time a cookie is offered to soothe your scraped knee, or ice cream to, I grew up going to piano. I used to be a concert pianist, and we would go to ice cream every time I had a recital, right, to celebrate. So I think we can all relate with this, and not only that, but every culture and every religion uses food as an important symbolic custom, right? So it's very significant in our lives that our life experiences is so often celebrated with food. And so what I'm going to enlighten you guys to today is what the can there's some different in aspects of intuitive or emotional eating, and there's a range of unhealthy to healthy emotional eating because we're all human. We all actually experience this in our lives. So there is an actual range where it is a healthy amount of celebrating and pleasure in your life. So this, and feel free to jump in anytime, Anne, so it's not just a fire hose from me.
Oh, absolutely. I'll interrupt as we go.
Okay, awesome. Yep, anytime. So using food in this way, when we talk about emotional eating in an unhealthy way, we're talking about the component where this is not eating out of biological hunger, but of emotional hunger. So emotional eating is triggered by feelings, and we'll talk about these in a second. They can be a range of, boredom or anger or apathy, or there's a whole range, right? But it's important to understand that this coping mechanism, it lies on a continuum. So you see on your screen, there's a continuum of intensity, and it begins at one end with mild, almost universal to us all, sensory eating, to the opposite. You can see it's step 5 over there, where it's It's used for numbing and often escaping our lives with this kind of destructive kind of eating. So let's talk about the first one, sensory gratification. This is the mildest and most common feeling that food can call forth, and it's very often experienced in pleasure. And there's a lot of kind of deprogramming that I do in my work in intuitive eating, with all the crazy rules and all the crazy stuff that we've picked up that disempower us around food. And pleasure is a very important part of having a healthy relationship with food. So very often I'll have women and my clients come and be like, I'm an emotional eater. And I don't take that as like all, I wouldn't diagnose them as an intuitive eater right off the bat, because there might be some other things going on. And it helps to know that it's really important to know that this is a normal, natural part of living, is having pleasure and having something that pleases you in your palate and your body, right? So letting yourself enjoying and appreciate eating, you actually reduce the amount of food that you need to feel satisfied when you're actually biologically hungry. So if you're allowing yourself to actually truly taste all the special foods coming up in the holidays that appeal to you, Thanksgiving, for example, often you will offset overeating. So this is an important thing to know, and it's a very normal, natural thing. Okay, any questions, comments? I guess it's like just to you, Anne, because nobody else can say. But of course, put in the comments if you have.
Yes, of course. I do have a comment here, and that's just as I run and as I deal with people through coaching. It's something, I think that's an important point. Food is meant to be enjoyed, and our eating experience is supposed to be pleasurable. So if you decide that you're going to eliminate all of your favorite foods and only eat foods you don't care for, you're kind of destined to not succeed in that plan.
Exactly. Yes, and it's good to know this range, because it's very often we'll be so hard on ourselves and we're not realizing, and oftentimes, especially dieters, where like any pleasure is bad, right? Like any pleasure means we're not doing it right. So this is a very important thing. So really the bottom line of this is we're talking about coping with your emotions without using food, right? So let's go to the next one. This one is comfort. So just the thought of certain foods has the ability to kind of evoke feelings, right? Like craving chicken noodle soup when you're sick, or your macaroni and cheese on a dreary day or something, that these are the kind of the comfort foods. And it's normal to have an array of comfort foods. Like if you're like cuddling up to Harry Potter and you get a a sip of hot cocoa with your dinner, that's awesome. So you kind of need to know that there's still a distinction, that occasionally eating these comfort foods can be part of a healthy relationship with food.
I think that's a really good thing to note, because I think sometimes we learn, oh, I'm eating for comfort, this is bad. And maybe thinking of it as bad is really part of the problem, right? Instead of just embracing what you're doing, and of course not overdoing it, which I'm sure you'll talk about.
Yeah, so this is where we start to think, to notice if food is the first and only thing that comes to mind to take care of you when you're feeling sad, lonely, or uncomfortable. Then that's where it becomes a destructive coping mechanism. And so many of us feel that food is the only thing there for us, right? So this is a very, very tip of the iceberg we're going into today. But let's go into the next one, distraction. And so this is a little further on the continuum of emotional eating, right? Food can be used to distract you from feelings that you choose not to experience. Maybe you're going through a rough time in your life and it's too much. So using food to cope in this way can start to become really troublesome. It can be a kind of a seductive, behavior that blocks your ability to detect your actual biological signals that your body's trying to talk to you. So whether your MO is to sit in front of the TV with a bag of chips, or to, just sit there with a thing of ice cream, to distract yourself from what you don't want to feel. This is really where we get into the juicy, the nitty gritty, like fun stuff of emotional eating.
Kelly, is distraction where you might be like, maybe it's comfort. I don't know if you're like, oh my gosh, I just had a day. I am just gonna go home and have that brownie and the Pepsi and just check out. Is that what you're talking about with distraction? Or is that
Mhm.
comfort? Or what is that? Because I've heard
It can,
people describe that kind of
yeah,
thing
it can
before.
be kind of a combination of both, right? It depends, but what's really interesting to note is when we start nurturing ourselves and we ask ourselves what we actually need. This is where the question commonly can be, no, I don't really need the endless, donut bag with TV. That's actually not going to nurture me or nourish me, and it's actually not going to satisfy my needs, right? So that's something to be aware of.
Right. That's a good point. Good point.
Okay, so the next one is sedation. So this is this more serious form of using food to cope, and it's eating for the purpose of numbing. Okay, so this is where you get into the self-medication, right? Medicating yourself through food. And this is common. Like I hear my clients talk about food comas, right? This is the food coma section here, or a food hangover. So either way, it's eating to sedate yourself, and it can be and as emotionally dangerous as using drugs or alcohol for this purpose. It's the same kind of a thing. So it's really keeping you from experiencing any feeling for extended periods of time. Okay, so this is an easy way to numb and sedate yourself, and especially in cultures where alcohol and drugs aren't used, food is often used, and it's kind of it's used in the short run to numb, but having a detrimental effect in the long run. Which, if you struggle with this, you know that it actually just compounds your problems, right? It actually just escalates your behavior. And now you have either a weight or health problem on top of your numbing your feelings.
Kelly, will you help me understand this one a little bit better?
Yeah.
So tell me about the food coma because I'm honestly not sure if I'm clear on what that is.
Okay, gotcha. So I know that there's probably like some of you like, oh, I've totally been in a food coma.
I'm
But this
sure I
is,
have been, and I just don't know
yeah,
what it is.
no, that's good. Like, so it's really where you are, you're using food to escape very heavy emotions. We all have emotions in life, right? So if something really stressful happens, or maybe you have some really bad news or some hard things going on in life you don't want to have to sit with or face, we can often use food and really go into eating and eating and eating and eating until we don't really even feel our body anymore, right? It can be like kind of roll me out in the wheelbarrow because I don't want to feel my body or my emotions, right? So we
Gotcha.
start to feel numbed. Does that make a little more
It
sense?
does. It does. I had a participant years ago who would they were going through a hard time and they told me that they would go to McDonald's and order like a number one meal and eat it while they drove to the next McDonald's, where they would again order the same meal and then eat it while they drove to the next McDonald's. And I think that's probably something they were trying to do. They were, of course, it was disordered eating and not healthy, but something they really struggled with while they were going through a stressful time of life. Does that make sense?
Yes, exactly. And oftentimes it's kind of funny when I say this, but sometimes food is the only thing that gets us through a tough time in life. And oftentimes we're so, you know, triggered or emotionally charged around this that we're like, oh, I'm a terrible person for emotionally eating, in that time of my life. And I'll say, what a beautiful and strange gift that food was, that it was there for you to get through that time of life. So it's an interesting, it's a way you can use it, right? But we want to start to cope with emotion without using food, so you can actually process through instead of get stuck into this emotional state. So yeah.
Right. Because sometimes the behavior starts for good reason and then continues out of habit or without learning better
Yeah.
tools.
Right, exactly. It can be a way to just, hey, what a beautiful gift. I don't need to do that anymore now that I'm aware. So let's go to the last one, the punishment. So sometimes eating for the purpose of sedation, like the last one, becomes so frequent and often and intense that you start to blame yourself, and you ultimately have triggers for punishing behavior. So a lot of times my clients will find themselves eating large quantities of food, and they'll be doing it in an angry or rebellious manner, or forceful, and it leaves you feeling like you just beat yourself up. So this is the most severe form of emotional eating, and it can really lead to a loss of self-esteem. It can really start to mess with you when it comes to punishing yourself in your eating, and you actually begin to hate food. So fortunately, this type of eating behavior disappears when you start to nurture yourself, when you start to ask yourself what you actually need. And this is obviously a process I teach. This is a very small part of intuitive eating. So this is something that you can relearn, and you don't need to actually keep self-punishing yourself through food. Okay, so that's kind of the continuum. And we can start talking about these reasons why, and we'll just quickly go over them, but you may have experienced this, right? You going to food for boredom, lying around the house on a Sunday afternoon, and you got nothing else to do but to take food breaks, killing time, right? So maybe, and as I'm going through these, write in the comments which one is probably the number one that you do when you are emotionally triggered to go toward food. So boredom, procrastination, is it bribery and reward? Like, if you're good, you'll get an ice cream kind of thing. And we do this as adults, right? I deserved it. I deserve it. So I'm going to go get that big box of donuts. Maybe it's exciting. So maybe food can be a way to add excitement into your life when it begins to feel dull. Maybe you're soothing yourself. So, and of course, this is a big one, where it can be more appealing to go to the kitchen for cookies and milk than to sit on the couch and experience those uncomfortable feelings with your run-in you just had with your dad, or whatever just happened. Okay, love. This can be a big one too. Food can be connected to the feeling of being loved. There's obviously we're marketed to quite heavily on Valentine's Day with chocolate. It's a classic. Or maybe you're just used to showing your love by giving food, or even being given food. And then the other one, oh, go ahead, Anne.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think so far when you asked everyone to type in, so far boredom is a big one. Boredom. I think a lot of us end up bored. Being adults, we're like on day 5,723 at work. Sometimes we get bored, and boredom helps us get through that afternoon slump, or I guess, food sometimes can. That was one. And then soothing, like you were talking about. So far what people are noticing. I know you have several more. We have all sorts of triggers that can get us going, right?
Yeah, and really the thing behind this, and the most important part of this, is if you can identify what it is, if you can identify, oh, you know what? It's just being connected. That's what I'm looking for. Or I'm going to food because I'm stressed. This is so hugely important that you recognize that if you can pinpoint what the trigger was, then you can actually give yourself what you truly need without food. And this is a powerful, like, don't underestimate the power of that awareness, because that is the way out. So yeah, so stress, anxiety, mild depression, being connected, diet rebellion, that's a big one. In fact, many people will say, oh, I'm just an emotional eater, when really they have just been restricted to such a degree in dieting over and over, that their body is biologically hungry for something that they're not giving it. So they're biologically and psychologically driven to food. And it's really just in rebellion of dieting, okay? Or maybe you need loosening the reins in your life. So if you have any of these ones on this next slide that feel resonating to you, that you go to food for, type them in the comments.
I think it's a good exercise to type in the comments because just like you said, how it's powerful to identify what it is, then you can, really give yourself what you need. So if it is boredom, then how else can you address the boredom besides the vending machine, right? Or if it is feeling connected, how do you feel connected without turning to food? So
Exactly. And oftentimes, if you do have a health coach, awesome, bring this up with them. Get creative. If you don't, there might be some other creative ways you can get support through this as well.
And stress and anxiety are the two winners of this screen.
Okay.
I'm afraid. Yeah. Two things that I think we all, experience at certain points for sure.
Yeah, and I want to stress that it is possible to be creative, to find how to soothe yourself from these emotions without going to food. And that's the main part. Okay, so these are the 3 secrets. Asking yourself, am I biologically hungry right now? What am I feeling? And what do I need? Okay, am I biologically hungry right now? What am I feeling? What do I need? If you need to write these down, I would suggest to write these down, because these are 3 pointed things that will very quickly, in under 30 seconds, be able to change your habit with emotional eating and actually give yourself what you need. So this is a beautiful process, and there's so much more to these, but we only have limited time. So, okay, awesome. So, I was going to actually lead you guys through an actual practical, tangible meditation. Are you guys down for that? And see if we can do it in like the next 6 minutes.
I'll answer for everyone. I think we're down with it. I would love to try. I would love to try. We've never done anything like this on a webinar, so I think it's really exciting.
Hey, awesome. So this practice is going to help you separate your emotions from your eating experience, and it'll help you teach you the skills to cope with them. So everyone, if you're looking at your phone, looking at emails, if you're doing 5 things right now, go ahead and just stop all that and find a place where you can be just comfortable and sitting. So go ahead and close your eyes and just take a few deep breaths. Just be okay with just being here right now without doing 5 things at once, or without doing anything but just being here. Okay, take one more deep breath. All right, now begin by thinking about a time in the recent past when you have had a desire to eat, not out of hunger, but by some other desire to eat. So just recall that event right now as vividly as you can in your mind. Good. So right before you began eating, recall what you were feeling at that moment. Did something happen before that urge to eat arose? Perhaps a conversation with a loved one, or a busy day at work, or a boring day without activity. Whatever it is, recall the immediate events prior to the time you started eating. Good. Now, simply note what emotions you are feeling. Were you feeling bored? Stressed? Maybe you felt sadness or anger. Were you just eating to be social with others? What was going on for you at that moment? Now, let yourself recall the act of eating. As you began to eat, what were you thinking? What were you feeling? Were you judging yourself for eating because of the fact that you weren't hungry? Were you zoned out, trying to numb yourself from your experience entirely? Did you start feeling uncomfortable physically? Just recall your emotional and physical feelings while you ate. Don't judge yourself, just simply notice. Good. Now I'd like to guide you through that same experience, but this time we're going to experiment with alternatives to eating. So once again, recall the events leading up to eating. What did you feel? Really connect with that feeling, whatever it was. Perhaps sadness or anger or anxiety. Maybe it was boredom or the desire to fit in. Now, instead of recalling yourself eating, let yourself imagine sitting with that feeling for a minute. Slowly scan your body. Start with your toes. Now your feet, your ankles, your legs, your knees, all the way up to your belly, your shoulders. Now your arms, hands, your neck, and head. Do you notice any urges that arise? Perhaps you want to talk, scream, cry, or even move in some other way. Now, notice the desire to eat as a way out of feeling this discomfort. Now that you've sat with your feelings, ask yourself, what do I really need? Since you've determined that you're not hungry, food is not the appropriate match to your need. There may be another thing that comes to mind when you really ask this question. So let the wisdom within you provide the answer to this question. What is it that you really need? Just notice. The answer may come with a story like, I need my partner to spend more time with me. Or, I need to talk to my best friend more often. Maybe it's the feeling of connection or being nurtured by someone else. Or maybe it's the feeling of what you really need is a sense of spaciousness or a sense of pleasure and enjoyment in your life. Whatever the feeling is, just notice without judgment. Good. Now ask yourself, how can I creatively fulfill this need without turning to food? And let this answer just come to you. If you need connection, you may schedule some time with old friends or family, or open yourself up to a new community through hobby or a sport. Or if you need nurturing, maybe you'll need to engage in activities that nurture you, such as painting or hiking or yoga, taking a bath, writing in your journal. Just let the answer arise. Notice how it feels to take care of your needs. Now take a few more deep breaths. And open your eyes and come back to the room. Okay, awesome. So just remember that just as you wouldn't expect to run a marathon if you've been sedentary for a long time, it's going to be unreasonable to just expect yourself to readily tolerate difficult feelings. So it takes developing these muscles, just like becoming an athlete, you got to develop your emotional muscles to be able to sit with and ask yourself what you really need. Okay, so when you do this practice in your daily life, just watch how your emotional muscles develop and how much longer you can actually stay with the feeling each time you attempt this. So if you end up eating to a point of feeling uncomfortable here in the near future, just be gentle with yourself. And just as the emotions will diminish, so will the physical discomfort, and then you can go at it again. It's a practice, and I know you guys can untangle this part and ask yourself what you really need. Give yourself what you really need. Okay, Anne, are you still with me?
I'm back. I'm back. That was great. I think it's really emotionally healthy when we can learn to feel our emotions and not distract ourselves with food or other things to avoid feeling our emotions. That's a good sign of good emotional health, and it takes practice, like you guided us through. So I appreciate that. That was really fun to try and to do. And I appreciate everyone for joining us today and going through that. If you have more questions or if there's questions that we haven't yet answered on the chat, just watch for an email from us to follow up with you and let us know any other questions you might have. If you want to talk with Callie or with any of our other coaches too, let me know as well and we can make that happen. Just want to remind everyone that as be self-aware and watch for those triggers, find a healthier way of coping, and really use that eating for nourishing your body, that your health can improve emotionally and physically, which is really exciting, and that's what we're all trying to do, I think. So
Yes, yes.
well, Callie, thank you so much for this today, and we'd like to thank everyone again for joining us. Make sure you join us again on December 10th. That's our next webinar. We will be talking about healthy mindset, which kind of goes along well with this, actually. So getting ourselves in the right brain space where we can live our healthiest self is what we're going to be talking about next month. So thanks again for joining us. This will be available on your account at myorion.com if you want to watch it again or if you want to share it with anyone. Also, a copy of the slides will be available for you as well. So thanks for joining us, and you guys have a great day.
Thanks, Anne. Bye.
Thanks, Kelly. Bye.